Hello, friends. We are back again to discuss True Detective Season 4. We are discussing, is it Part 3 or Episode 3? Either way, we're back to discuss the third episode. And I think we have... At the initial, my initial viewing, I didn't think there was a whole lot to talk about, but looking into it a little bit more, there's a lot in this episode. I think there's more questions than answers. There's still some fun stuff to discuss, so... But anyway... Alex, will you kick us off with an introduction, please, sir?
Yep, I'm Alex. You can find me on Twitter or the Page Chewing Forum or Blue Sky, usually as A Frog in Time. And I'm hoping at some point in my life to become a writer.
I think you're already a writer, but...
An author, then.
Anthony?
I'm Anthony Self. I'm on the Page Chewing forums. You can find me on Twitter under Mr. Selfie. I also have a YouTube channel called Horrible that does some indie horror gaming playthroughs, and you can catch some of my books, Birthday Treat and Catbox, on Amazon.
Very nice. Birthday Treat is fantastic. Everyone should read it.
Thank you.
And Chris.
Hi, my name's Chris Moen. I'm sometimes YouTuber, sometimes appear on other people's channels talking about cool stuff like this. And you can also find me in the Page Tune forums.
And Jared.
And I'm Jared. I'm on the YouTube at the Fantasy Thinker channel, talking about fantasy and all kinds of forms. And I'm also on Page Chewing forums and write a blog on pagechewing.com called Creative Crossroads.
New post out this week, or a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So, just a notice for everyone: we're I think in discussing season 4, we have to spoil a little bit of season 1. So, just a heads up for anybody listening who hasn't seen season 1, we may spoil a couple of things. But one thing I found interesting was that someone had asked Nick Pizzolo a question about season 4 and some creative choices, and he said he is listed as an executive producer, but he has no input. He had no hand in what's going on, and he thought that the Tuttle references were stupid. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know. Really? I go back and forth whether or not we should be referencing the Tuttle stuff from season 1, or whether it's better to leave it alone. I'm having fun just kind of exploring that. And they were a pretty wealthy and powerful family, so I kind of makes sense that they'd be dabbling in other things. But what does everyone think about that?
I think it makes sense because indeed in the first series, the Tuttle Corporation, if you will, the brand, could be perceived as the face behind the cult, right? So if in this series, if the cult is just kind of like a big red herring and the Tuttle Corporation or the cult won't actually have any kind of significance as such, if it's just the kind of cater towards the supernatural or cosmic elements, and it's not actually having anything to do with it, then I would agree it would be stupid. It's just a kind of tipping of the hat to the first series. It's just leading people down the garden path. But as red herrings go for these type of shows, when you have mystery involved, you do need to have a bit of a red herring here and there. Like, any kind of good Agatha Christie novel will have probably 2 or 3 red herrings thrown in there. So this could potentially be a red herring, may not. I guess we'll see when the cakes come out of the oven,
It generally falls into... I don't want to say it's a problem I'm having on the show. There's just so much. It's like kitchen sink at the moment. There's like a bit of supernatural. There's a bit of reference to the first series. There's a bit of everything. Like and more links to the Caribou again in this episode. All of this stuff put together, and it just seems like they are just throwing just a lot of misdirection, not in a cleverly plotted way, but just in, like I say, a bit of a kitchen sink approach to here's just loads of stuff and see what you can make of it, which is fun. Like, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to say I dislike it, but it also doesn't create, I think, a good stable ground for actually anybody trying to postulate idea of what actually is going on here, because there's so much of it's going on. And like I would say, even in the first series, the Tuttle stuff wasn't even really resolved there either, rather than it was just kind of referred to again. It was just this kind of idea that we thought was going to be pulled together. And I think, remember when we were talking about the first series, we kind of felt like there was a lot unexplored there as well, in that sense. So like, I actually don't mind the Tuttle references and the first series references with the Spirals, because I don't actually feel that they're going to resolve into anything. I just think they're sort of to tie the narrative of the seasons of True Detective going across from series to series in some way, or at least to give people the sense that this is a return to the glory of the first series, if nothing else.
I do wonder if there's going to be at some point the True Detective, the final series, where they finally go after this excuse me, all-encompassing Tuttle Corporation that's doing all the damage, and you get all, 8 or 9 detectives from from however many series joined together to take down the Tuttle Corporation.
Detective Justice League. Right.
I was going to say, I was thinking more of a Mighty Morphin Power Ranger style, but you know.
Well, there's a thing on Twitter at the moment. Together. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that thing on Twitter where it's like the True Detective series I'd write, and they'd have like people, couples from TV shows or whatever, or the kind of couple that they'd want to kind of come together as the two detectives. So you'd have like Freddy Krueger and Jason or something like that, or
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it, in a way, I do think it's a little bit of fan service. I think it's a way to kind of drum up those fond memories of season 1. Like, oh, that's from season 1, and that's the Spiral, and that's the Tuttles, and I get, like, you know, I don't know. I kind of like it being its own thing, but it's kind of fun too, just to get teased a little bit. But I don't think it's going to be. I still have a feeling we're going to come back to a really grounded explanation and all this supernatural stuff, which we'll talk about here in a minute. I think it's going to be some kind of PTSD trauma, something with the mind, but we'll get into all that stuff. The episode starts off with Hank hiring all these militiamen to hunt down the suspect, and I think we've discussed this too before. Is Hank seems to be involved somehow, and I kind of get the feeling like he's trying to cover his tracks in a way, that he wants the suspect dead. He doesn't want them to talk, so he kind of more indications of he may be involved somehow.
There was a strong hint that he was working for the mine.
Right.
So covering up crimes that the mine had committed as a shady organisation.
Yeah, I mean, we get that kind of Navarro basically is gunning for him at the moment, isn't she, when she finds out that, you know, he knew about Clark and Annie Kay's relationship, and didn't bring it to anyone's attention. He was the one that received the call, basically. Yeah, he's effectively now tampering with evidence. What would you call that? Or like just what's the technical word when you don't profit the information that you're given?
Yeah,
fuckery.
Yeah.
Are we now all agreed that it's beyond just natural incompetence and definitely deliberate disruption?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's at first it was almost like he just didn't want to deal with it type of thing, but then now it's kind of moved a little bit beyond that into a little bit of negligence, or a lot of negligence. Maybe.
There's a little reference as well that Danvers says, because she obviously knows about his Russian mail order bride, and says something along the lines of, you know, oh, he won't be able to afford this, that, and the other, so maybe he's getting paid off for this person on it, because, you know, we saw him on the previous episode where he was on the phone saying to the person, oh, don't worry, daddy's going to pay it for you, your mother's healthcare. And at the time you're kind of thinking, oh, he's being scammed, but maybe he is actually like, he's abundantly wealthy because of the fact that he's maybe getting paid off, so he has cash, probably from some nefarious means, or as you said, Alex, there, from the mining corporation, covering the death of Annie K, possibly.
Yeah.
Or he just out and out did it.
Now, was the this guy Williams? He killed. He was the one who killed the girl, right? From 7 years ago, or whatever it was.
I don't know if we know yet, right?
They had the
You mean Annie?
flashback, and they had the flashback of Navarro and Danvers crashing in on him. I remember them saying that Williams was dead when they got there, but of course we saw that wasn't the case.
Yes, yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
I think that was more the kind of case of their beef that they had, sort of thing, in the like past 7 years ago, because this guy had just got with this girl, had been abusing her, being like, she'd gone to the hospital a couple of times, and when she's telling the story to Peter, she's basically withholding the full truth because, yeah, he's in there. She's told him that when they got there, he'd already kind of shot himself, but we see him sitting in a chair whistling
Right, so-
a merry little tune.
Twist and
So I
shout.
don't think that's got...
So who
Oh,
killed him?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
the question. Who killed him? That's the question, I guess.
Well, this is where I think we're going to find out the fallout that Danvers and Navarro had, because we're not wanting to go back to the first series, but we had a similar episode with Marty, didn't we? So when they went to get what was his name, LaRue?
Yep.
And they found the children in the shed. He comes out and he just blasts them away, and they both have to kind of cover up the scene. So I think similarly, something like that's going to happen. And we know from previous episodes in this series that Navarro has a very strong anti-woman sort of like abuse policy sort of thing. We saw it in the first episode where we had the drunk husband that came into the fishing department and she just laid him out sort of thing. So my suspicion is that they get to this place where Whistler is, or what's his name? Is it Whistler or Williams?
William Wheeler.
Williams. Yeah.
Wheeler, sorry. When they get to Wheeler's place and we see the girl dead, I think Navarro... I mean, it could be a bit of a curveball. They might be trying to do a bait and switch where you think it's Navarro that's going to end up killing Wheeler, but actually it's Danvers, and then Navarro has to cover up for her, but then because she's covered up for her, they can't work together. She gets transferred out.
Maybe.
And, we
'Cause
go on from there.
He was singing Twist and Shout.
Oh,
Yeah.
Shaking a baby now.
So that Twist and Shout song came back to haunt us again with that guy.
I didn't catch that. I couldn't place the song.
Yeah, subtitles told me.
Yeah, I was the same. Subtitles.
Interesting. Huh.
There's also the fact that in an earlier episode, Navarro said to Danvers, "You suggested I move to the state troopers." So maybe that's part of it. Maybe that move sideways to the state troopers was to get her out of Alaska PD because she'd shot somebody.
Another mystery. Another possibilities again. It's not definitive either way about what happened, but it is sort of linked that their fallout stems from that incident.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest. This wasn't my favourite episode, just because of the fact. I blame you, Steve. I blame you, because you said in the last podcast that the third episode is where something crazy happened, and I was kind of expecting it. And apart from the kind of bit at the end, which was a little bit terrifying, it was more questions leading to more questions. But now, with only 6 episodes to go in this series, you'd like to think that they're starting to answer some of the questions that they've kind of already projected. So I'm kind of sitting there now and it's like, well, we're getting more questions now. We're getting more questions. And is it is it going to tip the scale of my interest now starting to wane because of the fact that like what you're doing is that you're just kind of throwing so many things at the wall now that it's like, are we going to have this I know, like Chris, what you were saying, I don't think this is going to be one of those series that's going to be wrapped up in a nice little bow at all. I don't either. But the fundamental things, can we, we've only got 3 episodes left now, so I think we're going to need to start getting to that kind of, the pacing needs to kind of be a bit more faster. There was a lot of exposition in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of long shots on agonized faces and, the typical person looking in the mirror and, looking at the little self-reflection. So there's a lot of self-reflection of characters going on. It was a little slower than the first two episodes, I thought.
See, one of the things that usually makes detective shows like this, where you're trying to work out, so enjoyable, is that they use some use of foreshadowing quite a lot. Like the first series is full of that. The relationship between the two detectives, his wife, his philandering that goes along, the relationship, even about how they are showing the flashback kind of scene, and they're doing this in reverse, which is kind of it's flipping the same idea that they're sort of looking back at previous parts of the relationship, but they're not doing any of the foreshadowing going forward. Like, I don't see events coming to pass in the future in the same way as in the past. So all you're left to do is trying to figure out the jigsaw puzzles of what these flashbacks are being shown to us. And I feel like the first series did an awful lot more of a good job in kind of giving you the idea that the thing that was really at play here was whether Cole was a wrong'un or not in that relationship, whereas I don't think we get the sense that either one of these two is a wrong'un. In this case, I think they're both very capable detectives. There's none of that at play. It's more about what the hell's going on in the context of this reality versus supernatural thing that we've got going on. I think that's really where the interest is here. And until they start to break down either some explanation for the supernatural side right across the board or not, I think it's going to keep butting up against me in terms of they're just throwing more stuff here. This is not being brought together into a coherent story at the moment. Now, there's still 3 episodes to go, but I do agree, Tony, insofar as this next episode has to give me something in terms of separating some of it, even give some of the stories from one another. What's the reality, what's the visions, what's not,
A good example of what Chris is saying was the whole branch they had throughout this episode of Oliver to Gak. They suddenly find out that there was somebody else who knew about this affair, and she was actually seeing somebody else who they didn't even know worked at Salal, and now they do know he worked there. Right. And they spent the whole episode trying to find him, and then about 3/4 of the way through the episode they find him. They go and talk to him. He tells them to go away, and they do. I was just like, well, what was the point of that?
Yeah. I mean, there was... he didn't seem to know that the scientists were dead. So there kind of comes that kind of aspect where... what's his involvement? And as you said, like now that opens like a whole other, if you have a kind of like plot line of different things that are going on. We've already got the thing about the water, what's going on with the water, we've got the case of the missing the dead Annie Kay, who's killed her. Like, is this something that's come back from the past? Then we've got the all the scientists, and which we find out from from Peter's cousin, who's a veterinarian, that they were dead before they came into the ice. So that then leads to the question: did someone put their clothes down, by their side, sort of thing? And there's so many different facets and so many different threads going out throughout now, that trying to, like, it'll probably come to the end episode and there might be like a thread that it's just overpassed because there's just so many threads going on now. And I know, like, as I was mentioning before, like every good mystery has to have like a couple of different angles and a different curveballs to throw you. But then also at the end of the time, like, with only 3 episodes to go now, like Chris was saying, like the 3 episodes now need to start giving us answers that we're going to be sitting there going, rather than,
There was another little thread thrown in there too, where Navarro had to arrest Annie because of the birthing clinic she was running, and what was it, just like trespassing or something or whatever? But
well, that was the first. Yeah, that was the first scene, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where we open with Navarro about to arrest her, but then she's at a birthing sort of place, which kind of, it seems to be like some kind of underground birthing facility, because no one knew about it. What I took away from that was that they were just trying to show Annie Kay as this kind of tender, caring person who gives life. Right, she's one of the in the sort of indigenous peoples sort of like folklore, like she's giving life, whereas everything else so far that we've seen is like taking away life. The water's gone bad, the scientists are bad, the mining is bad, like everything else is, but she's I felt it. Sorry, go on.
But it also showed us that Navarro also had to do things she might not like to be doing sometimes, and along with her as part of her police work, which it seems that comes up quite a bit.
It also that happens twice in this episode. They sort of clarify Navarro's motivation for wanting to find Annie's killer. It wasn't that they had a very long-standing friendship and that they knew each other and were very friendly. It then goes on to explore then the relationship with her mother, then what happened to her mother as being the reason why she's so driven to find the killer for Annie rather than this personal connection. Because.
So the birthing the first portion of the episode, I wondered if, because they did hint at Annie possibly being the person that everyone's referring to, like her, she's coming. So I wonder if she's taking revenge on the mine and the people involved in the mine in a supernatural sort of way. And if so, does that have something to do with all the stillborns? Because it seems like there's a lot of stillborns that's hinted at too. So maybe there's some kind of connection with her, like Tony said, providing life, and then now the babies are dying, some kind of sign or punishment. But I think that the Tadak stuff, or I can't pronounce his name, I think the only thing he did really for me is he made me question why he doesn't know that all these scientists are dead in such a small place. You would think that'd be pretty big news. It would travel pretty quickly. So it's a little bit surprised, but also he did give Navarro some grief over her not knowing her heritage, and her kind of, she doesn't really have an identity because of the experience with her mom. So she doesn't have that connection to that community because she has that disconnect. So it kind of demonstrated how she's struggling, or she's trying to fit in, and she's trying to kind of find her place and her heritage and how she fits into everything. So she feels like an outsider too. Her and Danvers both feel like an outsider because Navarro feels distance because of her experience as a kid, and Danvers feels the distance because of the friction with her stepdaughter, and she has this resistance to not let her get involved in the protests, which in turn keeps her from her family too. So there's that weird. So Danvers and Navarro have that in common. They both feel like outsiders, where they live.
Just going back to the point you were making then about possibly being Annie Kay getting revenge. The bit at the end where Dr. Lund was finally speaking, he said, and I made a note of this because it was odd. I thought it was odd, at least. We woke her up. Now she's out there in the ice. Not on the ice, where everybody else is. He's out hunting on the ice. She is in the ice. And shortly after that, they play the video where you see Annie Kay running around inside what looked like ice tunnels.
Oh, that was freaky.
It was freaky, yeah. So that kind of backs up your theory there, Steve, that Annie Kay is getting revenge. They've woken her up.
And the way that he points is similar to the way her mom points in the flashback from episode 2 when she finds the cross in the truck.
Yeah.
So it's similar. So that maybe there's something, but I don't think that really happened. I don't think that's.
Yeah, I think that's all in Navarro's head. Like we saw earlier on in the episode where she is walking on the ice and she has an orange, and she kind of throws the orange out into the penumbra, and then it basically rolls back to her, and she falls, and that's when she has a vision or a dream sequence, or a flashback,
There
whatever
was
you will,
also a kid singing Twist and Shout on the ice.
Yeah, Danvers' son. So it's funny to see that at the very end, when the scientist sits up, she's the only one there, right? I think, following what Chris was saying, I think this is in Navarro's head. I don't think this is actually happening. Either she's been infected by whatever may or may not be infecting the town, or there's some kind of trauma there that's giving her these hallucinatory visions or whatnot. Because she's both on her own in these scenes. I know, like, to make it dramatic and to make things tense with those type of things, you have to be like, when you see a ghost, if there's other people around you, it doesn't make it more impactful. But yeah, I do think these particular scenes are in her head. And it's funny, like when you mentioned the whole thing with the guy with the shotgun, I don't know if it was just me, this is a question to the group, like it seemed to me like he knew her. Even though he was asking questions, I got this kind of like weird sense that he knew her somehow, knew Navarro. Did you guys pick up on that, or was that just me looking too much into it, do you think? Or
Well, that kind of goes back to the fact that this is a small town, right? You would think that he would at least know of her if he didn't know her. But then why wouldn't he have heard about the scientist? So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I didn't catch anything specific.
Yeah, I think they have some kind of connection, but with such a small town, I would just assume that they know each other just in passing, at least, or kind of know of each other.
And yet they didn't know who he was when they were looking for him.
Yeah, he had no...
That's right, yeah.
That's true.
No electronic data on him.
He doesn't exist.
He's off the grid, man. He's off the grid.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's we know there are two communities within Ennis. Maybe the two communities don't really know that much about each other, or as much as they think they know about each other. Because I think the Inupiat village is slightly separate to Ennis. Certainly where those hunters were, they were referenced to as on the northern shore. So possibly out of town, but close enough to drive to.
Well, it's interesting as well, because when Danvers and Navarro turn up, and the guy that greets them, wasn't he the hunter at the very beginning of the first episode who sees all the caribous kind of fly off the mountain range? So maybe they know some more things than the people in the town about what's happening around them. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I didn't catch that. That was that guy.
Lots of stuff and a lot of characters. Oh my god, there are so many characters in this show for 6 episodes. It's almost mind-boggling. Like every time somebody mentions a name, even if it's somebody that we know well, it's like, oh, which one's that? And
we keep getting more too.
Yeah. It has the smell of a Scooby-Doo show to me at the moment. With this thing. So you have the mine, they're trying to protest against the mine. They are using a supernatural scare to do it. It's almost like we're going to unmask the killer and it's going to be, we would have got away for it if it wasn't for the pesky kids, that kind of thing. It sort of has that smell to it at the moment, this whole show of where the supernatural is coming from. And yet it feels hard for them to actually talk away that there isn't a supernatural element at this stage. I always kind of assumed that it was going to have a very reasonable drug fueled something like that, but the longer this goes on, there's a lot of different facets and a lot of different people that are affected in terms of these visions and things that are going on, that it sort of feels, well, if it's not that, then this is gonna. I don't know. I'm eager to see what to do with it.
I think what they've tried to do is they've tried to put it in the subtext, like when Peter's interviewing the candy stock guy who's doing these, like, hey, we all see like things in the dark and stuff like that. So I think they're trying to write it off as, everyone who lives in Ennis is aware of like these things that may or may not happen, but no one really talks about it. It's like that kind of, small communal town that knows that things go on behind the white picket fences, but they don't actually talk about them, amongst people. So I think there might be that element of that they're trying to sort of just brush away, to say like, yeah, this stuff, spooky stuff happens here, but we don't talk about it really.
Very folk horror-ish, very Wicker Man, or of that sense. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, a little too close to The Exorcist though in that last the last scene where he points and your mother's here and it's a little.
Mother says hello.
Yeah.
At least
Still,
it was just hello and not any of the other things Mother did or said from The Exorcist.
She does what in hell?
But yeah, these things usually happen when someone's alone. So usually not a shared experience.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I mean, it's quite a terrifying scene to watch,
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, obviously, the one thing I I found as well was when they're playing the video of Annie K when Peter's cracked the phone, and as you said, like she's in some like ice tunnel or something. And when they pulled away, I'm just thinking, would you really be watching this in a kind of crowded hospital tunnel, like corridor sort of thing, where like people are just walking by and they're just hearing screams coming from a phone? But
well, you're not used to that these days with the kids.
but how
And
was
no
it
one stops
recorded?
like, hey, what are you guys watching?
no, yeah,
How was it recorded?
you're watching that new TikTok. Yeah.
Is somebody holding the phone, or is it Annie's phone she's laid on somewhere and I don't know.
It looks like she's holding it.
Yeah, she was holding it. Yeah.
But then she gets dragged away. So, like, she's not holding it? I don't know. It's one of those ones I had to try and turn my brain off a little bit. Go, like, okay.
Well, I mean, it's funny then because like her phone was obviously retrieved by somebody. And
yeah.
I'm assuming it's going to be Clark because we find it in the trailer, their little Love Nest trailer. So whatever happened to her in the ice, I think that might be the root cause, the heart of the situation of what's been going on. Either she's discovered. I think what's basically, I'm going to go back to my original theory, that they got together. She's maybe gone above, maybe she was using him in the relationship to kind of get to know inside the scientific complex to find out what they were actually doing below the ice. She found out what they were doing. It wasn't whatever it may be. I don't think it's a supernatural type of element, but by her being there, she somehow contaminated what they were doing, and then this is being released now on the town. But that doesn't really add up because she's been dead for like 7 years, hasn't she? So unless they've tried to quarantine or isolate what's happened in those ice tunnels when she's been down there, and it's only recently got out, she's awakened sort of thing, I think maybe all the scientists have... It's become that thing where maybe something terrible happened, all the scientists tried to cover it up, and they've been able to do so for 7 years, but then something's happened and it's been released.
Yeah, but they also have they had her tongue in the first episode.
That's right.
So what are they doing? How did that get there? And is that part of her being released?
And how's it in such
body,
good condition after 7 years?
Well, because her body was found 7 years ago in like a kind of container, wasn't it? When she had all the stab wounds and everything. But her tongue was missing then. So you could theorize that her tongue was removed when she actually died, i.e. down in the ice tunnels. This is all theory, but but maybe they held the tongue on ice.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. A little cooler down the tunnels. Yeah.
I did wonder what started the fight in the hospital. Because it was a very convenient distraction to get everybody out of the hospital room apart from Navarro.
I think it was the militia people that were there. I'm not sure why they were there. Never really said what they were there for, what they wanted, but it did seem like some of the same people were there fighting the troopers. I don't know why, though. Maybe Hank sent them there? But it's pretty unclear.
I'm just wondering if we were going down a supernatural line, then Lund waking up and talking about we woke her up maybe sends certain people of a certain disposition or mental frailty a bit doolally and they start fighting. Uncontrollably just fighting for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, we have already seen the townsfolk start to fight amongst each other, haven't we?
That's right.
Which kind of leads to the kind of predisposition that, you know, something's wrong with the town and the people are fighting against each other, etc., etc. So this just reinforces that whole narrative that the people are fighting amongst themselves. Haven't seen anything with the animals, though. Unfortunately, I thought like the dogs, like Quavi's dog. Yeah, haven't been much in the way. They've kind of, I don't know if they've purposely kept away from animals now, but like the only last time that we saw was it Quavi's husky, who was maybe being a bit kind of rumbling, but he was trying to calm her down, sort of thing. But
we saw another stuffed teddy of the one-eyed polar bear.
Yeah, we did.
I'm assuming that was Danvers' child that put his hand on Navarro in the dream and said, "Find mummy" or "Tell my mummy," whatever it was.
Yeah, in the credits, it's Holden Danvers.
Yeah.
So it must be her kid.
So why do you think Danvers' child is coming to Navarro? Is that just something because they're sort of starting to form an alliance now? This is just something to reinforce the fact that, or do you think Navarro had some kind of aspect of her son's death? And maybe this is a guilt thing. Because as we know in any good kind of horror, guilt and grief are two sides of the same coin.
That's true.
And can bring out a lot of
maybe if
different emotions within people.
If Twist and Shout comes from this pivotal moment with Wheeler that split their friendship, maybe it's a way, the fact that we keep hearing it and the kid, the hallucination of the kid putting his hand on Navarro is a way of the supernatural side of things telling Navarro and Danvers they've got to get back to working together again properly to solve this. Yeah,
that could be, because didn't Rosie say in the last episode that the dead only come to tell you three things? Is it to tell you something? I forget what the other two are now. But it was like to tell you something, to lead you somewhere, or they're not done with something and
they're because they miss you, they want to tell you something, or they want to take you with them.
Right. So this could be a telling them they've got to work together. They've got to remember Twist and Shout and what it means when they potentially both gun down William Wheeler, who knows?
Such an odd song choice, isn't it? Twist and Shout.
Yeah, I would say so.
So did that trigger something in the first episode? So Ferris Bueller's Day Off is to blame for all this shit, basically.
And what do you think is the significance of the orange? Because we've seen it in the opening crawl, we've seen it in the intro, the peeled orange.
Yeah, right.
She throws an orange away. Do you think that has any? I think that's going to have some symbolic meaning. I don't know typically an orange is. Or am I just looking too? Am I trying to look too much into this now?
I can't believe there's any Inuit myths and legends involving oranges, because they would never come across them.
Right. I don't know. Is it part of that? Is it part of the the kitchen sink theory that Chris has there?
It could well be.
Could well be.
There's a lot of it.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I could think of is that the contrast between the cold and dark, and you have this orange, this really bright, fruit. So I get that's, but I don't. A lot of the stuff I feel like we won't understand, like just like the twist and shout thing in the first episode. We thought, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I think it's just gonna we'll find out later. I think because I can't think of any meaning yet for that.
The only kind of, and this is a crazy thought, but the only kind of thought that I had really was that it was a kind of some kind of metaphor for fertility. I'm not sure if Navarro's was it the first episode or second episode where she meets Carvey sort of thing, and she basically just wants to have a good time. I don't know if she's mentioned it or if it's, even if it's come up at all, about whether she's wanted kids or had kids or anything like that, but there was, I don't know, for me anyway, there was just something very, the way she kind of just looked at the orange, threw it out into the ether, and then it kind of rolled back to her. And this episode was kind of giving the emphasis on the sort of stillborn babies. We start the episode with a birth. We kind of come towards the end with a stillborn. I don't know. There was just something there. Maybe I'm just pulling at threads, pulling at sort of straws, but I don't know. I could be completely wrong.
And
Throwing another thread in there.
I think we see an orange peel, right, in the intro. At least in the first episode, I remember an orange peel. So I wonder what that was about.
As Chris was saying, it may not have anything to do with anything. Could just look like a good sort of colour juxtaposition with all the whites and the greys and the blacks. So to have a bit of colour pop in there might be something.
I'm not getting my hopes up about any of this. I'm just... I'll take what they give me.
Another thing I noticed on this episode that I hadn't noticed on any of the others was the amount of throat singing going on in this episode.
Yeah. There's a lot.
I mean,
Yeah.
I quite
right in
like
the
throat
opening scene.
singing. It's impressive. I can't do it. But is it significant?
Is it a culturally significant, for the Inuit there, and is it significant to the what's going on in the story as well?
As far as I can tell, it's mostly used for entertainment.
Because they were doing it at the birth, so I don't know
Yeah,
if
they were doing it
like
at
a
birth. They were doing
ritualistic
it for
type of thing,
They were doing it for the stillborn as well,
Okay, yeah.
and they were
I
doing
feel like
it.
it's a cool. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say they were doing it at the meeting as well when they announced the stillborn.
Right. Yep.
Might just be a cool way to build atmosphere.
It could be, yeah.
Have that in the background, yeah. But it could be some kind of way to fend off evil spirits or energies or something,
Right.
like a protective thing or a healing thing.
I think at the start and end of each podcast now, Steve, you should try and do the ooh, ooh, at the start. Just get us a nice little pace in,
Yeah. Yeah, next time I'll be ready.
It's impressive, though. I will admit, I wish I could throat sing like that. That's it's a beautiful cadence to everything.
There's a
It's very cool.
Scandinavian throat singer who is just unbelievable. I don't understand how she can go from a really low guttural growling bass note to a high-pitched squeak in the same breath.
Skills.
I tell you what, on the next Britain's Got Talent, I'll use this year to warm up the vocal cords and take it on the road.
I can't wait. I can't wait to just turn on the TV someday, Tony, and go, look at that.
Just
I can't believe this.
As long as I'll hold an orange as I'm singing it from my throat as well.
No, peel the orange
There
while
you
you're
go.
doing it. I want a brilliant idea and just leave it on the... yeah, that's a good idea.
Peel it.
And then eat the orange while you're throat singing. So as cool as I thought the scene with Navarro and Danvers, when they walk into the house and the woman's there and Wheeler's there whistling, as cool as I thought that scene was, it was very, very close to season 1. It was very close, and I don't know. It was a little too close. There's
That's why I
there's
think
paying
they're-
homage, and then there's
Yeah, I think they're throwing us a rope-a-dope. I think because whether people have rewatched the first series in anticipation for the fourth series, or if people just remember it from that scene, because it's quite an iconic scene from the first series. I think they're gonna throw us a curveball, and they're gonna do something like, as I don't know if it was Alex or Chris or Jared who said, like, maybe they both kill the person, or something else is going to happen there. I think that's not just going to be if it is the case that pardon me, if it is the case that either Navarro or Danvers kills Wheeler, will I be a little bit disappointed? Maybe. Because it is then quite on the nose as the first series. But if there is something else that happens in between, or that culminates in both of them coming away from that, and they both have some kind of guilt or some kind of complex that wedges between them, then that might be good to explore.
So if I had to guess, I would say Danvers kills him, Navarro helps him cover it up, and Hank finds out somehow. So Danvers is beholden to Hank because Hank has something over her. So Hank feels like he can do what he wants. She doesn't. He does. That might be where he feels emboldened to. Like, what are you going to do?
That's an interesting theory, because that reminded me of something. So when they come back to the ice rink where the scientists are thawing out still, and Navarro goes straight to Hank and says, like, you knew about Clark and Annie Kay and you didn't say anything. And he just nonchalantly shrugs as such. And then Danvers comes in and Navarro goes to her, like, what are you going to do about this? And there's a palpable sense that, I think he does have something over her, because there's a kind of, although she's showing her authority in that scene, and she basically tells him and throws the cup of coffee on him or whatever it was, there is a sense that she's sort of sitting there with kind of not pleading sort of like look in her eyes, but there is something behind that mask sort of thing where I don't know if she's scared of him or there's something that's kind of gone on beforehand, but there definitely was a palpable sense of he could say something that could like ruin her. And props once again to Jodie Foster for being able to kind of convey those different emotions in that kind of split second of a change around. But I definitely got something from that. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, you could tell that if there wasn't something there between them, then that scene would have been one-sided. Her taking charge and bossing things around and doing what she needed to do to get people to do what she wanted to do, rather than that tense standoff that you feel is something there.
I mean, he said I should put you on notice for Mrs. Robinsoning my son.
This is Robinson, my son. Yeah,
That was pretty
And
fun.
then when Peter turns around and who's Mrs.
Miss
Robinson?
Robinson.
Like, it's just that kind of
So
generational thing, maybe.
he's
But
basically just accusing her of sleeping with his son. Which we haven't seen any evidence of yet.
no.
It's always felt more like she mothers him rather than anything else.
yeah,
But maybe she's backing down because she knows what Hank is like and doesn't want. I can't remember his name now. The son to get caught.
Peter.
That's it. To get caught in the crossfire.
Too many names.
Yeah.
But then that's another question as well, because the way they portray sex within this series is very kind of harsh and very kind of like just transactional in that respect. Even Peter and his wife, you know, the only kind of couple that I can perceive that are like in love, you know, they have a new child, Dawkins, that could be a throw at kind of Richard Dawkins or whatever sort of thing in terms of evolutionary theory. But like Danvers went to Christopher Eccleston, who has been as he hasn't really had much time in this at all, and he hasn't really done anything at all in this. Whether he comes in the next 3 episodes or whatnot, I hope so, because that would be criminal if they didn't use him.
He is in the next one. I saw that preview.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, okay.
But you have like Navarro, who uses Carvey. Like she just turns up at his place and they just go at it. You have Danvers, who just go like it all just seems very blunt in that respect. So I wonder, if there's something there in that respect or not, or if it's just to match the kind of cold, harsh, you know, climate of Ennis. You know,
Kind of strikes me as it's like it kind of matches the environment. Like you said, it's kind of the cold and the small community. They're isolated. They're all a little bit, I don't say heartless, but they all have that kind of like a hardened shell. They're not very emotional with each other. They're all very, they're all almost like harsh to each other. Even people who care about each other are a little rough to each other. They're not very caring in that way.
Maybe it's just more practical than that. I mean, it's bloody cold up there. Got to do something to keep warm. It's just like functional exercise to keep the blood flowing.
Yeah, but that relates. It's more like a function rather than, you know.
Yeah. Because I think to live in a place like that, you almost have to live off the land. You almost have to kind of be self-sufficient. You can't just, you know, you have a limited amount of food that gets shipped there, and you're cut off. So maybe it is like a survival thing, a primal thing. The only other thing I could think of from this one was the witness who comes and says that they probably died from a heart attack and not the cold.
Right.
Which, taking a look at their faces, I mean, okay. Like, is that a revelation? I don't know.
I mean, it kind of definitely coincides with the Caraboos kind of flinging themselves off the cliff, with the scientists, you know, running out barefoot or with little to no clothes into the cold, harsh Arctic winds. Yeah, I'm kind of now leaning towards the fact that the kind of payoff for this is all going to be very grounded in reality, and we're going to be sat there going, really? Did that happen? Yeah? I don't know. What would make you gouge your own eyes out in that respect?
I don't know.
Visions again. I mean, that's the idea. You know, you don't want to see what you're seeing, whatever it is.
My sour gas theory is looking pretty strong right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the mine found something. Annie was patient 0. Maybe they have guilt about her, what they did to her, what they know happened to her, and she's not really there. It's just guilt from what they did to her, and they are all having this. They're all infected somehow with something they got from the mine, a gas or bacteria or something, and it's like a guilt thing they're all experiencing. The mine is poisoning the town. The town's having stillborns. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, hopefully we'll find out more in the next episode with where Annie K was. But I think, my theory then leads on to the fact that she found something either below the mines or below the science research station. Clark's gone to bring her out, contained or thought he contained whatever it was. This goes in with Alex's theory now about the gases or something, but over that culmination of 7 years, it's built and built and built, and it's been released. And now people are suffering the consequences for it. Yeah.
Here's a weird idea.
That's just what we need. More of those.
Yep. There is no murderer. Annie Kay died. The only shot we've seen of the wounds to Annie Kay, they were all roughly in the same place. And it was about at the end of where your arm finishes on your body. So maybe she stabbed
she killed
herself
herself?
34 times trying to stab something she was hallucinating.
Yeah. It's a good one.
And
That
then
was a good one.
the doctor came along a bit later and thought, I can bring her back, I just need her tongue.
Wow. But who stabbed the polar bear's eye? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
And how does the
Stabbed it
spiral,
himself.
the spiral stuff, how does it all fit in?
Yeah. That's a whole
The
nother-
cult stuff, the Tuttle, the...
Well, I don't think it does necessarily, other than, especially if there is a gas kind of thing here going on, like these kind of people use a cult or something to create a story around other things that are happening.
Is that sign associated at all with the company? Just
I don't.
like a logo or something? I don't know. I'm just
I would
curious.
have spotted that if that had been the case beforehand. Because they're saying this is a very
Yeah.
ancient sign, aren't they?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Fiona Shaw's character, who wasn't in this episode, as far as I can remember.
Yeah, I mean, not that
I missed-
corporations haven't included ancient
Yeah.
signs in their
Oh, yeah,
logos,
absolutely,
logos
yeah.
before, but I'm just curious. That's all. It's just,
Yeah.
Jared, I've got a great idea. You set up a new corporation, and if you pay me £50,000, I will tattoo the spiral on my forehead, and that's your free marketing right there.
Oh, okay.
Not free, because you have to give me the money, of course, but you know.
Permanent marketing.
Didn't they do that with Monster? Didn't Monster do that? As like one of their promotional things, like they'd say, like, get a tattoo of Monster, the energy drink,
Oh,
and some guy did. He got like Monster tattooed on his forehead or something like that. This was years ago, but the 90s were a crazy time.
Yeah.
Extreme. Without an E, just X.
Oh, I was going to say, what do you mean, extreme? Great band.
Yeah, interesting. But yeah, lots more questions, and I hope they don't fall into the trap. But I don't want to name another series because we always talk about it.
No.
But there's a trap, and hope they don't fall into it. I'm not going to say it.
Always lives with me.
Yeah.
So what are your predictions for the next one then?
I don't know.
I'm confident that we will get more questions and not a whole lot of answers again.
I would agree with that.
I think the answers
I
will
think
come
they-
in the last half of the last episode, and it'll all be last 20-30 minutes. We'll get all the answers in an avalanche.
like a mad rush.
Yeah.
Going back to Chris's Scooby-Doo.
They'll pull the mask
It's
off
not Annie.
Danvers.
It's actually.
They'll pull the mask off Danvers and say, it's the missing scientist.
Exactly right. Do you know what? It's a distinct possibility at this point.
We've got to find Clark in the next episode, though, right? I mean, he's got to pop up soon.
That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if Christopher Eccleston's in it, is he going to come in and start to deal with some of the disruption around the mine? You know, because the protests have been going on against the mine. There's a bit of civil unrest there.
Yeah.
The water's obviously affected by whatever's going on in
Yeah.
the mine.
Yeah. Somebody has to be reporting more and more reports of this water that coming out of the taps black.
Yeah.
That's got to get some notice at some point beyond just a town, I would think.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some definite civil unrest between the protesters and the miners. I wouldn't be even surprised if the kind of small little fracases that we've been seeing between, you know, patrons of a bar and in the hospital now is going to be exploding out into the streets, and you're going to have protesters against miners, and there'll be a backdrop of like this kind of riot or scene going on where the protesters and the miners and everyone else get involved, and there's going to be some action going on there. That's what I
And it's going to get quite tribal, obviously, because there's a lot more face painting coming, and as each episode comes along, it's becoming very much about culture wars as much as, you know, anything else. And pair that with the amount of hallucinations that people could be having, it could all start to devolve in that sense towards like whatever the whole place devolving and breaking down at that stage.
And then the polar bear is going to maul somebody.
Then that would be a great scene.
That'd be awesome.
And also in keeping with the idea that this is very much a horror TV series this year. Like, there's very, very strong horror theme throughout the whole series rather than a mystery detective show.
Where's SpongeBob?
Where is that toothbrush? Yeah.
Where's the toothbrush? That's what I want to know.
That's a big question. Yep.
That will be the last thing. That will be on episode 6. Navarro will come back, and then she'll just place it delicately on his table and then walk away, and then it'll fade to black. There we go.
No. It's going to be the final murder weapon, right? It's going to be taken and stabbed. It's going to be the only thing to hand. Stab with the through the eyeball of somebody, straight through their brain. Navarro is going to save the day with the damn toothbrush.
Now I've got a dark feeling that toothbrush is going to end up being placed on Kvarvik's coffin as he's being buried.
Oh no!
After the husky mauls him, yeah,
possibly, yeah.
Yeah. Alongside, but again, I like this thing of stabbing somebody with the eye with the SpongeBob toothbrush, right? And then the polar bear with the missing eye comes out as well, and that being some sort of spirit animal with the person that's just been killed. That's it.
All right, I think now
You too, huh? Yeah.
now there's some.
Kindred spirits.
I feel like contacting the writers and going, "Did you think about this?"
It's not too late.
It's not too late, indeed.
Interesting.
Even worse
Are we
than that.
done hallucinating now?
We're drinking the water.
Yeah.
I'm just going to remind you, by the time we get to the end of episode 6, the way they could have ended it, this is what they could have done, and this is what actually happened. I'm going to hold on to that.
It could have been death by toothbrush.
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob.
Pull off the mask at the end of it's just SpongeBob.
Especially if they fall under the ice, right? There's a scene under the ice, and Patrick's down there as well. And this could be.
They're all down there.
Yeah, they're all down there with Annie, SpongeBob, Patrick. They're all in the ice. The clues were all there.
Oh boy. Is Annie dressed like a squirrel? Oh, jeez.
With an eye missing.
Oh god.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. Yeah, so. Yeah, we'll see. So, in the meantime, Alex, where can people find you?
I can mostly be found on the Page Chewing forum and every now and then on Twitter and Blue Sky.
Nice. And Jared?
You can find me at the Fantasy Thinker channel on YouTube, and you can also find me at the Page Chewing forums as well.
And Tony?
You can find me on YouTube at Horrible, on Twitter under Mr. Selfie, on the Page Stream forums. Yeah.
And Chris?
And you can find me on YouTube under just my name, Chris Mullen, or you can find me in the Page Tune forums, where you can join in if you want.
Yeah, come and join and tell us about how your theories on SpongeBob and how he's behind this whole thing.
Damn.
Or at least tell us what the hell's going on in True Detective.
If you dare. Yeah. It'd be fun. Well, cool. So until next time, we'll talk to everyone then.
Bye.